to Represented, the podcast. I'm Aniki Shuru, racial equity coach for online business owners who want to be intentionally inclusive by building a business that is racially equitable. I created this podcast to normalize a conversation around racial inclusion so that fear is no longer the barrier that gets in the way of doing this work. This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Whether you're taking your first steps or you're well-versed in the journey towards racial equity, this space is for you. So welcome home, friend. Let's get started. From coast to coast, around the globe, we are represented. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Represented Podcast. Today, I am joined by the wonderful Annastacia Wainaina. She is somebody I have known for a number of years. We have never met in person. It's all been virtually, and we seem to have a very special bond. In fact, Annastacia is the one who nominated me for very recently the Beam Awards, where I was a finalist. And Annastacia is just a beautiful human who I am excited to have on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you. And you are amazing, and I am excited to be here. Thank you. It's such an honor. I love the work that you do. I love the name Represented. Amazing, because representation matters.
It really does. It really does matter. And Annastacia, before we get into the questions, I want people to understand who you are, because they might just be watching or listening going like, oh, we just have another guest. No, today is not just any other guest. Annastacia is somebody who you need to know. She's somebody you need to look up. She's somebody you should be following, because she is I don't want to use the word powerhouse because I feel like it's so overused, but she is somebody who is so underrated, but she has ignited so much in terms of the work that she's doing, and in particular, her podcast. So allow me to tell you who she is a little bit while she's on here. She's a renowned speaker, a coach, culture and leadership strategist, podcaster, author, and passionate advocate for children's protection and adoption. With her magnetic presence and unwavering commitment to making a difference, Annastacia has touched countless lives and left an indelible mark on the hearts of those she encounters. And so I am excited for us to dive into the conversation. And today our focus will be mainly on the work that you've done on the podcast, because it's where I spend a lot of time listening to you, listening to your thought leadership, seeing how you've grown over the past 4 years, Annastacia. You've grown tremendously. And with your podcast, Freedom Fire, you have had outstanding guests. And I am just in awe of how you've been able to bring all these incredible people. I mean, we're talking about women such as Kemi Nekvapil, Khadija Gbla, Yemi Penn, Elizabeth Lang, Nkandu Beltz, Aminata, and many, many others. Where did this idea of Freedom Fire come from?
The idea of Freedom Fire as a podcast is just me wanting to have the conversation that we get to have, you and I, outside this podcast, that are quite powerful and that would change someone's life, but then we don't record them. And I wanted that to be in a place where people can go and consume it. So really, it really was my will to bring people who are the Mother Teresas of the world, but really you never hear of them, because we just think being the Mother Teresas of this world is being on the global platform, and they are in the global platform, just not that huge visibility. And so for me to be able to have conversation, and for the people who listen to my podcast to be able to enter into their world and to know that there are people out there who are doing amazing work. That's what I live for. And if one statement can change someone's life, then that's what matters. Because once one life is touched, then it's so many other.
That is so true. Amplifying the voices of the unsung heroes, so to speak. So when you were starting 4 years ago, where did you begin? Did you put a list together? Because I feel like, and I was talking to you last week, and I was saying, gosh, I feel like you're the mayor of like Australia. Like I can come to you and you know absolutely everyone. And I love how generous you are in you're a connector. That should be one of your identities. Like that should be in your bio. You're a connector. You love to connect people and you do it so beautifully. And so when you were thinking of putting this podcast together, did you have a list of people you're like, I want to talk to them and I want to talk to them podcast style so that what we are sharing gets heard by other people? How did you go about the process of bringing it to life?
The process of bringing it to life it's a dream. You have all this dream and you really keep like as I said, it's about the conversation, and I know conversation matters. And then we'll have that conversation, and then I'd go and I'm like, that was quite powerful. So then I thought, okay, that should really be tabled somewhere where people can come back and just listen to that behind this, just get to hear the conversation that happens, right? So I thought, how do I do this? I had started some clips, doing some clips on Facebook, and I was like, is Facebook Live the way to go about it? Then podcasting at that time was becoming a big thing and stuff. So I thought, okay, let's put it in a podcast. So I just decided to do the podcast. Did I come up with a list? Initially, I just thought, who are the most interesting people I want to have a conversation with? Who are the people who impacted my life? And so I started there. And the journey has been the same. If I see someone and I hear something that they say that has impacted my life, I want to bring them to the podcast because I want people to get to know them and get to know them deeper. We were just talking before we began this conversation that I actually never send questions because I never want people to bring in their intellect. I want people to bring in their insights and what they're doing with life, where they are, what are they getting curious about, and all those things. And it's what I want to bring to the world, how the leaders and then change makers, the trailblazers, how do they think?
I love that so much. And what lessons have you gained from interviewing so many different change makers? We have change makers and trailblazers from different backgrounds, different countries, different areas of work. What are the lessons you yourself personally have kind of been left with after having those interviews, having that one-to-one presence with them?
That at the end of it all, as human beings, we just want to belong. We just want to connect. We just want to belong. We all have a story, and our stories are powerful, but we just want to connect at the very basic level of humanity. We just want to connect. I think that has been the greatest lesson. And for me, every person I get to sit down with, they are huge lessons. Just getting to see how people think, how they just navigate their world, what matters to them and why it matters, the way they do their delivery, then what are their convictions are, how they do leadership, how they just navigate the world of just being human. That just there's so many lessons to learn, but I think if there's one I could pick, is just at the very basic level of being human. We just want to belong and to connect.
And do you see a correlation between their successes? Are you seeing, they say that success leaves clues. Are you seeing similarities? Like you talk to this person and you're like, they did something in a different field, but there are certain things, there's certain ways in which they discipline themselves. And the reason why they're successful is because there are ABCD things that they've done. Are there things that are similar that you can see as you speak to from one person to another?
They are definitely things. There are people who believe, self-believe, which is really key to everything, that I know who I am. And that's key to everything that we do, because once you have the knowledge, the know-how of who you are, then you're able to say to the world, I am not asking you permission, I'm just showing up. So they show up, they dare to show up, not asking for permission to show up, but they dare to show up. And once they show up, the other thing that I see that is really so clear is that there are people who are curious. They're long life students. They're curious about the world. They're curious about the future. They're curious about humanity. They're just curious. And that's what drives them to do what they do.
Curiosity. And is there a particular intervention? Probably this is a hard one. I should have probably prepared you for this one. Is there a particular conversation that has just stayed with you, a person you spoke to, and the conversation has just stayed with you, the insights, the takeaways, it's something that has just stayed with you?
I think every conversation leaves something that stays with me, regardless. I think that always happens. But one that has been revived very recently is a conversation I had with Khadija. You actually mentioned Khadija, and I think someone coming back and saying that conversation has changed the trajectory of my life. That has shaped where I want to go. It's validated me. That's quite impactful. I did have a conversation with Robert Mason, and he's written a book. He's a pastor who was depressed and at the verge of taking his own life. And after that conversation, I remember when it aired, somebody messaged me on social media and said to me, I was that person today. And just hearing that man has given me a rope to keep on hanging there. That I will never forget. And if for anything, I've never stopped doing this podcast, is for that very just simple statement. That because of a conversation of somebody who was at the thread of really taking away their life, somebody hearing that conversation made them change their mind because they were on the same trajectory.
Oh my goodness. That is beyond the response I was expecting. That is just beyond. That has blown me away. And it's kind of answered my next question, which was, where have you drawn your inspiration from in order to be consistent with the production of the podcast? Because we know it's a very saturated market, so many podcasts out there, so many choices. How do you keep yourself motivated to keep showing up, to keep being consistent? Because life can get in the way, and that response in itself would keep you going and wake you up every day to just keep showing up and doing this work. But are there other factors as well that keep you inspired to keep showing up and be consistent?
So yeah, so it's for people like those. It's for the people who like show up every time I release a podcast and they're listening and they give feedback and they say that that spoke to me. That makes a huge difference. It also for legacy, for my children to be able to go back and say, that was my mom. Those are the conversations that she dared to have. So I have no excuse because the road has been set. I always say that I sit in the shoulders of giants, and I know that an overused statement, but I literally do sit on the shoulders of giants. The women who are in my life, in my family, who've gone before me, have dared. And because they've dared, there was a roadmap of like, you can't afford to sit on the sidelines. Then you must put yourself there. And I want my children to look back and say, if my mom could put herself out there in this capacity, then I dare do more. So that's the other reason that I just keep doing this. The third thing is because I do have coaches and mentors who really makes it very clear that consistency is the only key to get to where you're wanting to go. You want to change humanity, if you want to move the needle in the way we do this life, then you must keep on showing up, regardless of how you're feeling, regardless of what's going on, that you must keep showing up.
Oh, I remember it's taken me back to I think it would have been either last year or the year before last. You sent me a DM, and the DM was simply keep going. I love how you're showing up. You're making a difference. Keep going. And I cannot tell you how much I needed. I didn't know how much I needed to hear that, to be quite honest, until I read that. And I almost got really emotional because, the work that I do requires so much, you know, um, uh, mental capacity. It requires so much resilience to keep showing up and talking about something that is not everybody's cup of tea when it comes to anti-racism, and to just keep talking, keep educating, keep calling people in. And when you sent me that message, that just really, it put so much fuel in my work to keep just showing up. And I wonder, are there any self-limiting beliefs that you've had to unshackle from in order to show up the way you do? You speak so passionately, your coaching, your facilitation, and I always get this feeling of Anastasia is not afraid. Like she is, you have a tenacity. There's something, there's a fire that is brewing. I feel it, how you show up. There's something. Then I'm so curious to know, do you have self-limiting beliefs that get in the way and you have to like unshackle from them, or you're still working on them?
And I've done so much work on myself, and I dare say maybe that's why the showing up the way I show up. It's not that I've always been like that, and so, and though I've been raised to be told you can, then you're in the world and you show up in the world, and then things don't go the way you are planning, and you're only so human to think, oh my God, who do I think I am? But then once you go back to why am I doing this, and I think that has always been the lesson, why am I doing it? Once I remove the me in it, because once I put me, if it's about me, then am I good enough? Then what is it about me? But then when I know it's because it's for somebody else, and it's where I want to go, and it's for what I'm wanting to put into the world, that just keeps me going. But we all do have self-limiting belief at some capacity, in some way. And really, for me, it's most of the time to the question to ask myself, do I qualify to be inside this room? Mm-hmm. But then I've got coaches, and I say I sit in the shoulders of Jan, but I've got coaches who reminds me every day, you are there by merit, and you just need to show up. You just need to show up, the powerful you, the you, just go do you. Yeah. And I've come to a point where I just have to bring myself and show up without asking the permission to the world. I talked about it before. I don't need to ask the world permission. I just need to show up, and my people will be my people, and there are those that will not be my people, and learning to not really get caught up in that. But why doesn't so and so like me? Why did they say this? When we are in social media, particularly, people will always comment some stupid things. But if I just don't dwell on it, because that person is not my tribe. So if I can keep focusing on my tribe and having that, and it's some days I have to remind me. Some days I have to remind me. I know I've started the podcast with someone at some point, and the direction where it was going, they just wanted to tell me what to do on my podcast, and I had to actually say, we'll stop this here and not air it. And it takes courage. It takes courage to actually go like, actually, I've got boundaries. We'll stop this here because we're just not aligned, So it's doing some work on myself to get to that point where, it doesn't mean that some of these things that we have, they stop, and you can hear the chatter starting to come up, but then learning when to go like, I hear you, I acknowledge you're there, but hey, this is where I'm going, and I'm just gonna do this. I'm just gonna do it, with my knee niggling, and I don't have the strength, that I'm just gonna do it.
Well, that is just, we can end here. That in itself is incredibly powerful, and it speaks to where you come from. It speaks to your upbringing. It speaks to, yes, the little girl who was told she can. If you can take us back to those endless plains, as you put it on your website, that you come from the endless plains in Kenya, take us back to little, your middle name is Njeri. Take us
Yes.
back to little Njeri. And you said that you were a big dreamer, and I believe you're absolutely living your dream. If little Jerry was to look at big Jerry now, what would she see? What would she say? Like, take us back to that little girl as she was growing up in those dreams, and bring us to where you are now.
I'll tell you something before I answer that question. The other day, I was having a conversation with my mom, and I'm very honored that I do have her here spending some time with. And it's really good to go back to think who was I? How was I behaving? Who was I like? And I said to her, if you were to go to one place in the world today, one place you've always dreamed about going and you just wanted to be there, where would it be? And she said something that shocked me. She said to me, I never thought I would leave Kenya. I never thought I had never thought that I would be on a flight anywhere. And I stood there. She said, but on the other hand, you, as a little child, from the time you could speak, you kept talking about planes and the way you would go to these places and stuff. And I look at you now and you live on that plane, because I'm always traveling, and I am like, oh my goodness. So there you go. That's the start of the dreams. And a parent who didn't tell me that if I can't dream, where do you think you can go with that? It was just encouraged. And look at it today. So if I can look back at that girl, and I think I have been so privileged in so many things, because sometimes, like again, I bring another story. The other day I was talking to somebody who was bleaching, and I was like, I don't understand. I just don't get it. And then she said, what do you mean you'd have grown up like this? And I looked back and I think where I grew up, dark, and I am dark, I was never told that my skin is an issue. So it's never been like being lighter is a privilege. And now I have conversation with even my friends growing in the same time and whatever, that they were told the lighter you are, the prettier you are and stuff. That's not a conversation that happened for me. So I was very privileged to have people in my life who have shaped me to always, like, believe in you and go where you're going. That young Jerry, when I look at her today and where I am, the one thing I would have said, and I continue to even remind myself now, trust the process. Because when you're in the thickness of things, when you're going through a storm, it seems like it's so huge, it's so dark, and I don't know if I can do it anymore. And at that peak of when you're wanting to quit, life is just about to begin. And I have seen it so many times in my life when I'm just feeling like, look, I can't keep doing this. And I have this conversation real with God. I'm like, God, this is a joke. I just can't keep doing this. I have tried it and you've promised, but look, I'm done. Right? And in very, very next few days or something will change. It's always the turning point. Well, we are at it. We don't see it. We don't recognize it. We don't even think it. It seems like it's the end of it all. It seems like there's no hope, but it's always the beginning of something grander and bigger.
Amen. For our people, let's talk about our people for a little bit. Particularly those who live in the diaspora. And there are so many things that get in the way of them being who perhaps they might have dreamed of being. I remember, I've been in this country for 24 years now. And when I first came, my first job was a cleaning job. And that was simply due to the fact the other Kenyans who were here, and I was associated with. Those were the jobs that they were doing. So I assumed that that is where we start from. It was just a given. We come, we clean, this is where we start. And then we work our way into various other things. Even though, coming from Kenya, we would have had other jobs that didn't involve, cleaning. We were qualified, we had good education, we were in university, we were studying, we were smart, intelligent, and yet we went for things that were less than what we were qualified for. What do you think? Somebody listening to this might be a migrant woman of color, might be just somebody who is hoping to succeed in whatever field they are in, but they find themselves, they're just coasting. Life is just happening. It's the 9 to 5. You wake up, you go to work, you do what you need to do, you come back. And life is just passing by. It's been a year, it's been 2, 3, 4, 5. What would you say to that person who's just coasting and deep down they know, I was made for greater. I was made for something bigger than this, but I'm just coasting.
Yeah, here's the thing. We don't only live once, which is a cliche we say. We die once. We literally die once. We live every single day. So we've got to get to a place where we live today as if it's my last day, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. But I know once I die, it once, and that's it, done. So if you were to ask yourself, if all the other things were removed and you only knew that today was the last day, what is it that you would do? And if you live your every day from that place of what is it that I would do if I knew today was my last day? Because every day we've been given, it's a privilege, it's an honor, it's a call to yet say yes to our greatness. And we all have greatness, regardless of where you are at in life and what's happening. And sometimes, as I said, when you're in the storm, when you're in the midst of the storm, it's really hard to believe and to know that life will change. But the sun always rises. It always rises. So regardless of where you are and what would be happening right now, and you're feeling like life is just happening, life is happening for you, not to you. It's just happening for you. So you're probably being prepared for the next level of greatness. And here is the one thing that I believe, that the universe and God has a way of really giving us the same lesson until we learn. It may come in different shapes, but until we learn, until we know that we're being prepared for the next level. And so here's the thing, to think, whereas I'm in this muddiness and I'm in this craziness, in this storm, what is the lesson? If I keep finding myself here, what is the lesson that I'm not learning? What is it that I really, so start looking at those really little shiny diamond in it. What could be the lesson? As hard as it is, what is the lesson? And gratitude will always give you that. In the midst of your chaos, in the midst of whatever, just standing and saying, I'm grateful for. And life is just one thing to be grateful for. I'm grateful for. What are the 3 things that I would stand today and say I'm grateful for? That shifts where you are, and you start to see, and you have a different perception of life, and you look at it from a different place, other than, oh my goodness, I'm always here. Life, nothing good happens to me. I'm always like this. When you go looking for it, you will find it. As a migrant, if we go looking for that racist person, you will find them. Whatever you're looking for, you will find it. So how about you look for the positive? How about you look for the things that you could be grateful for? What about you actually take life and ownership of your life in your own hands and know wherever you are right now, it is your fault. You're responsible for it, whether it's positive, whether it's negative. Whether I don't have a job today, it is my responsibility. It is my fault that I don't have a job. And once we come from that place, other than it's someone else's responsibility, it's that person's fault. When we come to it, what is my play? What is my part? What is my responsibility in it? You will do something about it. Always do something about it. I was doing a project and I was procrastinating or just giving excuses, because there are always excuses, and I wasn't getting, because time, I'm so busy, I'm not doing this. And I was listening to Jim Quick, and he said, whatever it is that you thinking you don't have time for right now because you're so busy and whatever, ask yourself, is it that important? Is this really important to me? And once I stopped and I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah, the things that I'm not giving time for, they are really actually quite important, you know? So it's really, I think it's a series of questions, a series of sitting back with yourself and thinking. First, take the ownership. Second, know that wherever you are, it's not gonna last. The sun will always rise. And that, what are the actions that you can take? What is it that I could do today to move the needle from where I am to move to the next step? Just simple things. What is it that I could do? A conversation with someone, you know, a call to, you know, whatever it is that you need to do to change your situation right now. What is it that you could do?
I feel and hear the coach in you emerging so much. And I'm sure at the end of this conversation, people will want to know, how can they work with you? How can they connect with you? And so I want to shift gears a little bit now and talk about conscious leadership. Because this is an area of expertise for you. And I came across a video that you have on your website where you were sharing a statistic where you're saying 90% of businesses that are started fail in the first 12 months. Is this specific to particular demographics, or is it just a general holistic statistic? Because I'm wondering, is that something to do with Black-owned businesses or just businesses in general? And what's the reason for that? And what's the solution to not find yourself in that 90%? Because we have business owners who are listening to this podcast right now, and there's been a shift that's obviously happened, particularly in the coaching and personal development industry since the boom in 2020. Things have really shifted over the past, 2 years or so. It's not, we're going, we're kind of in the trough and not so much in the peak. And so what would you contribute to that?
Businesses do fail, and the statistics are actually general. It's not specific to a specific demographic. It's just general. It's just general. And there are so many reasons. Even profitable businesses do fail. So sometimes it's not about just the profit. Yeah. It's really how the foundation you lay when you're starting business. It's all great because we sit down and we're like, oh yeah, I could do that. If you don't plan it properly, if you're not strategic about it, it will not work. And it's not just strategy. There's so many things that compound to making a business successful. And it's also learning when to pivot. Yeah, when there's a change in a sector, in a season and whatever, when do I pivot? So not falling in love with the idea. When you fall in love with your business, it will not make it. Yeah, so you have to be driven by data. You have to be driven by statistics. You have to be curious. Every day learning about the industry and the sector and the area where you're at. What is changing? How do I need to pivot? How do I need to change? What are the structures that I need to put in my business? Other people just fail because you're caught up in the ideation stage and you never grow. You're just caught up there, so you don't grow. Others fail because I don't have a business plan, or we dare start businesses without even knowing who are you going to sell to. You don't do your market research properly, or you don't just go out there and actually sell. I have a coach who will not let you start a product, an idea, unless you've actually sold it. Because they're like, okay, if you bring out a program out today and nobody's going to buy it, so who exactly, you've spent all this time and money into it, who's going to buy it? Which is totally the opposite of what we've been told.
Yeah.
And I like that thought process. Like, yeah, go once one person has said yes, then come back to me. We will work with that, because if one person has an interest, there'll be many more that have an interest, and we can grow. The other thing that we don't normally understand, and this I'm learning even myself, is the understanding the microeconomic unit of your business, knowing your business to that micro unit, so that you know, if I put an ad today, what's the conversion rate of that ad? What is it costing me? Just that ad, what is it costing me? Because we generalize things, and we tend to either exaggerate or underrate whatever it is, because we are like, yeah, it's just $40 a day. No, how much is it costing you really? So getting to that micro unit of the whatever. Coaching and mentorship, I can't insist on how important that is. If you want to play soccer and play it at a professional level, you get coached. If you want to do any sort of sport and do it at a professional level, we get coached. The presidents and the prime ministers of the countries, they got advisors. Businesses are driven because they've got advisors, they've got boards, all these things. You as a person and your life that is so important to you, you have nobody speaking to it. It's a problem. If you've got nobody who's actually seeing your blind spot, your bias is somebody who's pushing you to get to where you're wanting to go, because a coach is not a cheerleader. If you have a coach who's a cheerleader, everything you bring to the table is yeah, it's not working. You need somebody who's gonna call bullshit. You need somebody who's gonna call the greatness in you, and you need somebody who's gonna ask you the right question to push you to the next level. But if you're just if you've had a coach and you're still in the same place and you're not growing, there's a problem. And like, if you talk to people like Oprah and you hear her talk and stuff, she has like 5 different coaches and stuff like that. And now you don't need to start with 5, but there has to be somebody who's speaking into your life. If you don't have that, again, you will not grow your business. And to build your business, you have to grow you. To lead an organization, you have to lead you. It all starts from you. So whether it's business coaching or whatever, they must be speaking to the person that you are, because it's all here. Business will fail because it's here, or in the mindset. And so you need somebody who's going to work with your mindset, work with, setting you up with where the process is, where all these things being set up right. And listen to this, things will fail. Don't be afraid, it will fail, and that's okay. You're better off that you started. Now you got what it takes to start and to grow. Now, if that fails, don't get caught up in it. Don't let that destroy you. Okay, it didn't work. What are the lessons and the skills you've learned in that you can bring to the next idea, and then move on? Businesses fail. That's just what it is. If it fails, just don't sit there. Don't get caught up there. Move on to the next thing.
Learn and move on. Learn quickly and move on. One question that's come out of what you were sharing is the idea of having a mentor. Yes, coaches. And I love the analogy you shared about people in sport. They have coaches in order to get to the next level, and equating that to ourselves, whether we be in business or even in the workplace. One of the questions I remember when I used to work in corporate was wanting a mentor, wondering who I could approach to be my mentor, and just that conversation. And I think that's a conversation that a lot of people still have, like approaching people, can you be my mentor? And that is not how you approach people. There's a lot of work that is required as a mentee to be done. There's a lot that is required, because finding a mentor and getting them and their time and the dedication that they pour into you is not easy. And so if there's somebody who's listening and going like, I need a mentor, or where do I begin with finding a coach, what would you say to them?
Adding value in people's life. It's all you're going to do. You have to add value. If you're going to people and all you're wanting is to take, look at that person. Who is that person you're wanting to be in their space and in their world? And here is also a secret when you're choosing a coach and a mentor. Don't choose somebody who's not where you're wanting to go. If you're a 6-figure coach, for example, and you're wanting to grow to 9-8 figures, you can't take a 4-figure coach to drive you there. It's a different skill set that is required. It's a different conversation that is required to take you to the next step. So you have to be with somebody who is really playing at that level where you want to go. Right? So that's one thing to think. But now you've seen them, you've admired them, you've done your research, because don't believe social media. Don't believe social media.
Oh, yes.
You know, it's the highlight of people. People can fake it. People can buy fobs, whatever, and have a fake fob out there. People can buy likes. People can buy all these things. Don't believe that hype. Do your research. Immerse yourself in their work. Get to know if they actually light you up and they speak to you. Don't choose a coach or a mentor who's going to be a cheerleader, as I said, because that's a huge mistake. If everybody told us, like, for example, as a business person, if the person you're selling to can tell you really why they didn't buy from you and they were really honest, would all be better. If you have a coach who's going to act like that person is telling, oh, it's just because I don't have money and I don't have time, instead of telling Annie, actually, you suck. You know, because when I'm honest with you, what you do, because that your coaching techniques didn't really fit in me, it will help you to go and become a better person. Now we're in a culture where we want to be celebrated for even failure. We want to be celebrated for things that we didn't even acquire. You don't want a coach like that. You want somebody who's going to call the greatness, hold the safe space for you, but also call the bullshit. And say, you're not getting here because you're not putting in the work. Ask you the question. So you want to look at those things. But once you identify that person, you want to know, how can I add value? How can I add value in that person's life? So don't contact them saying, oh, can you mentor me? Can you do this? How can you add value into their life? And start the conversation by adding value. Add value. And once people know you're networking, you're in their space, you're adding value, they will notice you. And then now the conversation can open very openly into where you're wanting to go. But if all you're wanting is to take, people get exhausted and their time is valuable and they're here, they're there. It's, you know, so it's learning, who's this person? Where do they hang out? Hang out there. Which places do they go? Which conferences do they attend? Attend the conference, add value, be in the same spaces, get noticed, get seen, because you're sharing spaces in that space. Yeah. But if you're gonna just be whatever, sitting with people, as you were saying, all we do is clean, and you can never get any other job in this country because people are racist and people are it's all cleaning. So you're gonna end up being a cleaner. But actually, if you dare say, yes, I'm cleaning today because I need to put food on my table, but I know I am called to be in a C-suite, then start hanging out with people who are in the C-suite, because you're going to start talking their language. And before you know it, and it's who knows you more than who you know. It's who knows you. It's in this conversation, in those spaces, that you have a conversation with somebody who added value, and they go like, oh, I remember so-and-so, she was in fashion and she said she was looking for this. Okay, let me give her a call. You know, it's you talked about being a connector. I love connecting people because I know, and I've said this so many times, particularly for our people, I want to think I'm sitting here and I need a lawyer that I can pick up a phone and say, I need help. So I want to see my people elevate. I want to see them grow. I want to see them in places so that I know at any point there's somebody in each and every area I'd love that actually knows me, that I can call and we can have that conversation and know that they'll actually hold the space for me or connect me or that. And it costs nothing. It costs nothing to connect people to the right places with the right people. This person might work with this. It might not end up being like that, but you never know. and that person will remember. So add value into people's life.
100%. Now, last question, because this conversation has been, you've dropped gem after gem, and just so much wisdom shared here. You almost feel like taking yourself to when you first arrived here. Had you had some of this piece of advice, it would have saved you so much heartache. And so, if fear was not a factor, how would you show up in your work?
If fear was not a factor, how would I show up in my work? I would be in government changing things. And I dare say that because, as I said, I love advocating for children. And the political platform is a huge platform once used correctly. I am for child protection because I know we have one childhood. If we do it correctly, we transform lives. If that one child doesn't have the ingredient that it requires to be a productive member of the society, it takes us a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of heartache, a lot of therapy to ever change that life. And all we have is between 0 and 7. We miss that opportunity, and our costs and everything it is that much high to ever turn around that life. So I have a vision. I am on a mission to really change the lives of children and make sure that children can be raised in an environment that are family friendly and filled with love, where they are safe, where just the very fundamental of being human, that is love, is just accorded to them as a right, because it's a right. That is so important to me. And whereas I know that the political platform is a huge platform to change that, the political platform comes with a lot of other things that I still feel held back to really engage with. And so if fear was not a factor, that's where I would play.
So the political space is where you would play if fear was not a factor.
Yeah, it's where I would play, just to change those dynamic and the way we make policies, where we put our funds, where we put our resources, the way we look at things and stuff like that, because the foundational is so important. It's so important.
Well, Annastacia, here's to that dream coming to pass. You're passionate. I can see you bringing a whole community behind you, rallying behind what you believe in, and wanting that for not just our children, but within the spaces we occupy, that the children who are coming up are indeed feeling and experiencing what is their birthright. Where can people find you and connect with you, and dare I say, work with you?
Lovely. I'd love to work with somebody who believes in themselves and wants to just grow and elevate their presence and just answer to the call of their greatness. I am on social media. I am on LinkedIn as Annastacia Wainaina. I am on Instagram as Annastacia Wainaina. I am on Facebook as Jerry Wainaina. Beautiful. So I am in that, and the podcast is called Freedom Fire. Listen in and let me know what you're thinking.
Love it. We will have all those links for you in the show notes. Thank you so much, my friend, for being here, for sharing so openly and candidly and powerfully. And I cannot wait to see how you are going to impact the spaces that you currently occupy and more in the future to come. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love what you're doing. As I said, representation matters. It's amazing to see the conversation you're holding, the guests that you get to bring, and to do the work tirelessly and just keep giving, keep giving. I love to watch what you're doing. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave a review so this podcast can reach more online business owners, and together we can begin to normalize racial inclusion in the online coaching space. I'd love to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where this podcast episode was recorded, the Wiradjuri people in central New South Wales, Australia. Music produced in Nairobi, Kenya by Patrick St. P. Mbaru and Kambua Mathu. Vocals by Joanne Matata.